Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 deeply disturbing stories that took place in high schools, places that should feel safe and familiar, but sometimes become the setting for experiences that are anything but normal. These aren't urban legends passed around at lunch tables. These are real events that happened to real students who were just trying to get through their day when something went terribly, disturbingly wrong. Before we begin, I want to know, are you in high school right now? Have you graduated? Do you remember that feeling of walking through empty hallways after everyone's gone home? There's something uniquely unsettling about schools after hours, when the fluorescent lights buzz too loud and every sound echoes in ways it shouldn't. Drop a comment and let me know your experiences. And if you're watching this in your school library or study hall right now, pay attention to who's around you. You never know who's watching. Alright, let's begin. Story 1, The Woman in the Woods. I was a senior when this happened. Senioritis had fully kicked in, that special combination of academic apathy and social exhaustion that hits everyone in their final year. It was football season, and our high school was always huge on Friday night games because our team was actually competitive, and honestly, there's just nothing else to do in our boring country-ass town. One day at school, we were in some joke of an elective class, Introduction to Psychology or something equally pointless. My friend JJ was in this class with me, so we'd always mess around and barely pay attention. The teacher had basically given up on making us learn anything. It was a Friday and there was a home football game that night. During class, JJ, being the smooth talker he's always been, spun his chair around to face these 2 girls, Kayla and Ashley, who sat a few rows behind us. "Yo, you guys going to the game tonight?" he asked, flashing that charming smile that somehow always worked for him. We already knew them pretty well. They were in our grade, part of the larger friend group that hung out together at parties and bonfires. So it wasn't weird of him to invite them or anything. They seemed down to meet up later, so we made loose plans to go together. JJ dropped me off at home after school, and about 4 hours later he picked me up again. Then we swung by to get Kayla and Ashley before driving to the school's back parking lot, the one that bordered the woods behind the football field. We had some 4 Locos in the car, the disgusting caffeinated malt liquor that was popular back then because it was cheap and got you drunk fast. We sat in the car for a few minutes, making sure no teachers or security were passing by, then poured some into water bottles to bring into the bleachers with us. The game started late, around 7:30, so by the 3rd quarter, it was already getting dark. By the 4th quarter, it was fully dark, with only the massive field lights illuminating the game. Our team was losing. Bad. Like embarrassingly bad. So bad that even the die-hard fans in the bleachers started leaving early. The energy was completely deflated. None of the usual cheering and school spirit, just disappointed silence. We stayed anyway. We weren't really there for the football anymore. We were just enjoying being drunk and hanging out. The game ended, our team got demolished, and within minutes the field and bleachers emptied out. Players rushed back to the locker rooms in embarrassment. The visiting teams slowly made their way to their buses. The crowd scattered to the parking lot. Within maybe 10 minutes, we were among the only people left in the bleachers. There were maybe a couple other stragglers, a few students finishing conversations, a parent or 2 cleaning up trash. We were honestly pretty drunk by this point, and the team's defeat wasn't ruining our vibe at all. If anything, it made the night feel more chaotic and unstructured, which we liked. When the field lights suddenly shut off, leaving us in almost complete darkness except for the moonlight, we realized everyone else had left. The few remaining people had filtered away without us noticing. "Let's go lay in the field," Kayla suggested, already climbing down from the bleachers. JJ ran to his car to grab more alcohol. By now it was probably close to 10 p.m. When he got back, he had this mischievous look on his face. "Yo, let's go into the woods," he said, gesturing toward the tree line behind the football field. The girls immediately protested. "Hell no. That's creepy as hell." But that's exactly why the idea seemed fun to JJ and me. We both got up and started jogging toward the woods, leaving Kayla and Ashley alone in the darkness. "Wait, don't leave us here," Ashley called out, her voice tinged with genuine fear. We knew they'd follow. That was the whole point, get them scared enough that they'd chase after us rather than sit alone in the dark. We reached the fence. There was a section where the chain link had been cut and peeled back, creating a gap that students used to sneak into the woods for various reasons. We crawled through and started walking down the small hill into the tree line. Behind us, we could hear the girls reluctantly following, cursing us out the whole time. "You guys are assholes," Kayla shouted. We laughed and kept going, walking deeper into the woods. The trees blocked out most of the moonlight, making it significantly darker. We had to move carefully to avoid tripping over roots and fallen branches. After a minute or so, JJ turned to me with that look he gets when he's about to do something stupid. "Let's lose them and hide," he whispered. "Scare the shit out of them." I grinned. "Let's do it." We started running, making exaggerated loud footsteps so the girls would hear us moving away. Behind us we heard Ashley yell, "Don't you dare run." But we kept going, veering off the main path and ducking behind a cluster of thick trees. We crouched down, trying to muffle our laughter. We could hear Kayla and Ashley calling our names, their voices getting closer. "This isn't funny." Ashley's voice cracked slightly, she was genuinely scared now. "JJ, where are you?" Kayla sounded more angry than scared. We stayed hidden, watching their silhouettes move through the darkness about 20 feet away. They were going in the wrong direction, moving parallel to us. JJ was trying so hard not to laugh that he had to cover his mouth with his hand. We waited maybe 30 seconds, planning to jump out and scare them. But before we could, JJ tapped my shoulder urgently. I turned to look at him. He wasn't smiling anymore. His eyes were wide and he was pointing past me, deeper into the woods. I turned slowly to look in the direction he was pointing. About 15 feet away, standing perfectly still between two trees, was a towering figure. At first, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It was so dark that details were impossible to make out clearly. But the figure was definitely there, a tall, dark silhouette that seemed to absorb the faint moonlight rather than reflect it. And it was tall. Way taller than any normal person should be. Maybe 7 feet. Maybe more. It was hard to tell in the darkness, but the proportions were wrong. We both froze, staring at it. Then it spoke. A woman's voice. Low and raspy, but definitely feminine. "You kids shouldn't be in here." The voice sent ice through my veins. It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was just matter of fact. Like she was stating an obvious truth. JJ and I didn't move. Didn't speak. We just stared at the figure, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The figure was getting bigger. Closer. But I didn't see any legs moving. I didn't hear footsteps. It was just approaching. Smoothly. Silently. Like it was gliding across the forest floor. "Run," JJ whispered. We both turned and bolted. We crashed through the underbrush, not caring about the noise we were making, just trying to get away. We were shouting the girls' names. "Kayla. Ashley. We gotta go. Now." We found them maybe 10 seconds later, standing on the path looking confused and annoyed. "What the hell?" Kayla started. "Run," JJ yelled, grabbing her arm. His tone must have conveyed the seriousness because both girls immediately started running with us. We didn't slow down until we'd crawled back through the fence and were standing in the parking lot next to the football field. All four of us were breathing hard, bent over with our hands on our knees. "What the fuck was that about?" Ashley demanded. JJ and I exchanged a look. We were both still processing what we'd seen. "There was someone in there," I said. "A woman. A really tall woman. She was just standing there watching us. And then she started moving toward us," JJ added. "But like not walking. She was getting closer but her legs weren't moving." The girls stared at us like we were insane. "You guys are fucking with us," Kayla said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. "I swear to God we're not," JJ said. He looked genuinely shaken, pale, eyes still wide. If he hadn't seen it too, I would have thought I was hallucinating. But we both saw it. This 7-foot-tall woman just standing there in the dark. We all walked quickly to JJ's car, constantly looking back at the tree line to see if anyone, or anything, emerged from the woods. No one ever did. We sat in the car for a few minutes, catching our breath, trying to make sense of what had happened. "Why would an older woman be in there at night, alone?" Ashley asked. "It's not like it's a nature trail or anything. It's just woods behind a school." That was the thing that bothered me most. There was no good reason for anyone to be in those woods at night. And our school didn't have security back then. No one patrolling the grounds or checking the property. So who was she? What was she doing there? And why did she seem so unnaturally tall? The four of us ended up going to hang out at JJ's house after that. I'll leave the rest of that night to your imagination. Let's just say the combination of adrenaline and alcohol made for an interesting evening. But the story doesn't end there. We're now fast-forwarding to that summer, about 8 months later. I'd taken a job as a summer custodian at the school. It was easy work and they gave me a raise every summer I returned, so it was worth it. There were usually about 4 of us working, 2 older full-time custodians and me and another 18-year-old student. One afternoon I was in the center courtyard of the school mowing the grass. It was hot as hell and I was just mindlessly pushing the mower back and forth, not really paying attention to anything. I happened to glance up at the building and I saw someone standing at an upstairs window. It was an older woman. Maybe 65 with short curly hair. She was just standing there, perfectly still, looking down at me. I stopped mowing and stared back. Something about her felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I raised my hand and waved. She didn't wave back. Didn't move at all. Just kept staring. My skin started to prickle. The distance and the glare on the window made it hard to see her face clearly, but something about her posture, her height. I basically ran inside to where my boss was working. "Hey, who's that woman upstairs?" I asked, slightly out of breath. He looked up from the floor he was mopping. "What woman?" "There's a woman standing in one of the upstairs classrooms. I saw her through the window." He frowned. "There's nobody else in the building today except us." "No, I definitely saw someone. Come on, I'll show you." He followed me upstairs. I led him to the math hallway where I'd seen her. I was pretty sure it was one of the math classrooms based on the window position. But when we got there, all the classroom doors were closed and locked. The lights were all off. Through the small windows in the doors, we could see the classrooms were empty. My boss gave me a look. "See? Nobody here. Maybe you saw a reflection or something." "I know what I saw," I insisted. "There was a woman. She was standing right there." He sighed. "Look, it's hot out. You've been working in the sun. Maybe take a water break, drink some coffee, wake yourself up a bit." He went back downstairs, clearly thinking I was seeing things. I stood in that hallway for a minute, staring at the classroom doors, trying to figure out which one she'd been in. But they all looked the same. Empty, dark, silent. I was genuinely freaked out, but I had work to finish. After I completed the mowing, I started mopping the upstairs hallways and classrooms. Eventually, I made my way to the math hallway. My process was always the same. Open all the doors, turn on all the lights, then mop each room systematically. I had my portable radio sitting on the floor playing music like I always did. I was mopping about 3 rooms down from where I'd started when, over the music, I heard a distinct voice. A woman's voice. "Young man." It was clear as day. Not muffled or distant. Like someone was standing right there in one of the nearby classrooms. I immediately turned off the radio and started checking every classroom, my heart pounding. "Hello?" I called out. "Is someone up here?" I desperately wanted to find someone. Anyone. A teacher who'd come back for something. A staff member I didn't know about. Any normal explanation. But every single classroom was empty. I checked behind desks, inside closets, even in the corners where shadows made it hard to see. Nothing. No one. The hairs on my arms were standing straight up. I could feel that fight or flight response kicking in, that primal instinct that tells you you're in danger. I abandoned the mopping and went straight back downstairs to find my boss. "Someone's up there," I said urgently. I heard a voice. A woman's voice calling me young man. He looked at me with a mixture of concern and skepticism. We went back upstairs together and I explained exactly where I'd been standing and what I'd heard. We checked every classroom again. Together this time. Still nothing. My boss put his hand on my shoulder. "Go home. Take the rest of the day off. Get some sleep. You're obviously stressed out or something." "I'm not making this up," I said, but even to my own ears I sounded desperate. "I believe that you think you saw and heard something," he said carefully. "But there's nobody here. Trust me. Go home, rest up, and come back fresh tomorrow." I left, but my mind was racing the entire drive home. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. The woman in the woods. The woman in the window. The voice calling out to me. And then it hit me, what if they were connected? What if the figure JJ and I had seen in the woods behind the school was the same thing I'd seen in the window and heard in the hallway? The height matched. The age seemed similar, at least from what little I'd seen. And both encounters had this same quality of wrongness, like reality was slightly off. When I came back to work the next day, I told my boss I just didn't want to work in the math hallway anymore. I said it creeped me out after what happened, and I'd be more comfortable working in other parts of the building. He agreed without argument. Probably thought it would help with whatever psychological issue he thought I was having. For the rest of that summer, I never went back to that hallway. I'd clean every other part of the school, but I'd skip those classrooms entirely, and my boss never pushed me on it. It's been years since then. I've graduated, moved away, started my adult life. But I still think about that summer. About the woman in the window who didn't move. About the voice that called out to me in an empty hallway. About the figure in the woods that seemed to glide rather than walk. Ever since then, I wholeheartedly believe that my old high school is haunted by the spirit of an older woman. I have no other explanation that makes sense. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder, If I had gone into that math classroom when I heard her voice, would I have seen her standing there? Would she have spoken to me again? Or would something worse have happened? I'm glad I never found out. Story 2. The new kid who wouldn't leave me alone. This happened when I was 15 during my sophomore year of high school. Unfortunately, because lunch periods were randomized that year, I only had 2 of my actual friends, Liam and Mike, in my lunch period. The rest were acquaintances or people I barely knew. A few months into the school year, during first period astronomy class, a new kid walked in. Our teacher, Mr. Hendricks, who was kind of a jokester and loved embarrassing students in a supposedly good-natured way, made the kid introduce himself to the entire class. "All right, new guy, stand up and tell us your name and where you're from," Mr. Hendricks said with a grin. The kid stood up awkwardly. "I'm Craig. Just moved here from Illinois." Mr. Hendricks teased him for a minute, made some joke about Illinois being flat and boring, then told him to take a seat. I sat in the back row, and the only open desk happened to be right next to me in the back corner. Craig walked over and sat down. Class hadn't technically started yet, so everyone was still chatting. Craig looked around the room nervously, then I felt his stare shift to me. I turned and we made eye contact. He nodded his head slightly and said, "What's up?" "Hey man. Welcome," I said, trying to be friendly. He introduced himself again, so I gave him my name. We made small talk for a few minutes, nothing substantial, just the usual new student stuff. Craig was a white kid with very patchy, pubic-looking facial hair that he absolutely should have shaved. He wasn't particularly attractive, but he wasn't ugly either. Just average-looking. The kind of guy who blends into a crowd. But there was something about his energy that felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. That class period, we had to work in pairs on an astronomy assignment, so Craig naturally asked if I wanted to partner up. I didn't really have any close friends in this class anyway, so I said sure. We grabbed laptops from the cart and started working. Pretty quickly, I realized I didn't like Craig's sense of humor. He joked constantly, like every other sentence was a joke. And he acted like we were already best friends despite having met literally 5 minutes ago. But his jokes weren't normal. They were aggressively vulgar and sexual. Just constant dirty jokes, curse words every other word, references to porn and sex that felt way too forced and uncomfortable. I wasn't a prude or anything. My friends and I could be crude sometimes, but this was excessive. It felt performative, like he was trying way too hard to seem edgy or cool. By the end of the period, we had to exchange numbers for the project. I gave him mine reluctantly, already regretting partnering with him. Eventually lunchtime came. Mike wasn't at school that day, so it was just Liam and me sitting at our usual small circular table in the cafeteria. I was mid-sentence telling Liam about some video game when I saw his eyes look up at someone behind me. Then someone pulled up a chair next to me and sat down. I turned and saw Craig. He patted my shoulder and said, "What's up, buddy?" I died a little inside. This meant he'd be sitting with us every day now. There was no escaping it without being overtly rude. I tried to stay positive and give him a chance. Maybe he was just nervous and trying too hard. First day and all that. But within minutes, Craig started saying weird shit again. Liam tried being polite at first, but eventually he caught on that something was off about this kid. He kept shooting me these knowing glances when Craig wasn't looking. Those, "What the fuck is wrong with this guy?" faces that only your best friend can give you. That lunch period cemented the fact that Craig was not normal. I'm not judging anyone for being socially awkward or having trouble making friends. But Craig wasn't just awkward. There was something dark about him. The things he'd say went beyond social ineptitude. They were genuinely disturbing. After school that day, it was a Friday, I started walking home. My house was about a 10-minute walk from school, and I usually didn't mind the walk. It gave me time to decompress. On my way, I got a text from an unsaved number. When I opened it, I realized it was Craig. The message said, "Turn around." Confused, I turned and looked behind me. Craig was running down the sidewalk toward me, waving enthusiastically like we were long-lost friends reuniting. "Oh God," I muttered under my breath. I stopped and waited for him to catch up, because I didn't know what else to do. When he reached me slightly out of breath, he asked, "How far do you live from school?" "About a 10-minute walk," I said. "Oh cool, same. I'll walk with you." My heart sank. This was not what I wanted. We started walking together, and then Craig said something that immediately raised red flags. "Hey, you want to come to my place real quick? We could work on the astronomy assignment and knock it out. I've got some beers in my fridge." I was 15. Craig was also supposedly 15, though he looked older because of the patchy beard. The idea of drinking beer with this kid I'd just met, in his house, alone, sounded like the worst idea ever. "Nah, I'm actually busy later," I said. Got plans with my friends. Oh yeah? What are you guys doing? Shit. He was fishing for an invitation. Just hanging out at Liam's house. Nothing special. Can I come? He asked directly without any shame or self-awareness. I was genuinely speechless. This kid had known me for one day, literally hours, and he was already trying to force his way into my friend group. I scrambled for an excuse. Liam's mom is really strict about new people. She doesn't like strangers coming over until she's met them first. Sorry, man. Craig looked disappointed but seemed to accept it. Alright, that's cool. Maybe next time. We kept walking and I started to realize with growing horror that Craig was walking me all the way home. He wasn't turning off onto a different street. He was just following me. I got to my house and said, "Alright man, see you later," giving him a fist bump to make it clear this was where we were parting ways. "See you later," he said cheerfully, then kept walking down the street past my house. I went inside, immediately pulled out my phone and texted my group chat, "This new kid Craig is fucking weird." Liam backed me up instantly, "Dude, yes. Something is seriously off about him." We spent the next hour making plans to actually hang out at Liam's place that night. Not until like 9 p.m. after dinner and everything. Around an hour or two after I got home, Craig texted me something that made my blood run cold. "Yo, what's going on in front of your house? Why is there a cop car?" I jumped up from my bed and ran outside to the front stoop. There were no cop cars. The street was empty, except for Craig, who was standing in my driveway laughing. "I got you," he said like this was the funniest prank in the world. Then his expression shifted slightly, became more serious. "I thought you were going to Liam's house?" "Yeah, later," I said, my mind racing trying to figure out what the hell was happening. "Why are you being weird, man? Why are you at my house right now?" He visibly deflated. The smile fell from his face. I thought we could hang out." "Dude, I gotta go inside," I said, and I turned and went in without waiting for a response, shutting and locking the door behind me. He texted me immediately, "Bro, WTF, why are you being like this?" I was genuinely speechless. I'd met this kid today. We'd spent maybe a cumulative 40 minutes together. Why was he acting like we were best friends? Why was he following me home? Why was he now stalking my house? I texted back, "You're freaking me out, bro. This is weird." That was apparently the wrong thing to say because he sent me a long message about how he thought I seemed different and actually cool unlike everyone else at this shitty school, but now I was being a dick just like everyone else and judging him. I screenshot the message and sent it to my group chat. My friends were equally shocked and amused. I decided to email my astronomy teacher right then and there, asking if I could do the project individually and explaining that Craig was making me uncomfortable. Then I left my house and walked to Liam's place just to get away. While I was at Liam's, Craig tried calling me. I let it ring and didn't answer. I stayed at Liam's until late, probably around 11 p.m. or midnight. By then, my parents and my younger sister were out. My parents were having dinner with friends, and my sister was probably at her boyfriend's place. Nothing unusual. When I got home, I locked the front door behind me and went upstairs to my room. I started watching YouTube videos trying to unwind. Then I heard it. The back doorbell. Our house had doorbells on both the front and back doors, and they had different chimes so you could tell which one someone was ringing. This was definitely the back door. I went downstairs expecting to see my sister at the back door. She sometimes forgot her keys. But the lights in the backyard were off, and when I looked through the glass panel in the door, no one was there. I opened the main door but kept the screen door locked. "Hello?" I called out into the darkness. I 100% heard the sound of someone's shoe scraping against the concrete patio. Just to the left, out of view from the door. Someone was there, hiding just around the corner. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and ran back upstairs. I tried calling my dad, but he didn't answer. He was probably still at dinner with friends. My phone started ringing. It was Craig. I didn't answer. Then he texted me, "Come outside." My hands were shaking as I typed back, "I'm calling the police." To my shock, he responded immediately, Okay, I'm leaving." It was him. Craig had been hiding in my backyard, ringing the doorbell, waiting for me to come out. I immediately took screenshots of the texts and sent them to my family group chat and my friends. Then I sent them to the school administration email, explaining everything that had happened. The school reached out to Craig's parents the next day. Apparently, and this is the part that still gives me chills, this was the exact reason Craig's family kept moving around. This wasn't the first time he'd done something like this. He developed these intense, obsessive attachments to people at every school he attended, and when they rejected him, he'd escalate. Stalking. showing up at their houses. In one case, he'd apparently broken into someone's garage. His family kept having to relocate because of the problems he caused. Monday morning, Craig didn't show up to class. He never showed up again. If I had to guess, his family moved again or transferred him to a different school to avoid the consequences. But here's what still haunts me. What if I had gone outside that night when he was hiding in my backyard? What if I had opened that door? What was he planning to do? I never found out, and honestly, I'm grateful for that. But sometimes I still think about Craig. About how quickly he attached himself to me. About the look in his eyes when I rejected his friendship. That mix of hurt and rage. And I wonder how many other kids at other schools had similar experiences with him. How many of them weren't as lucky as I was? Story 3, the student who didn't exist. I live in rural New Brunswick, Canada. This happened during what should have been my senior year of high school, except I'd unfortunately been held back, so I was returning as a 19-year-old repeating my final year. I live in a pretty rural area, so our middle school and high school were in the same building. It was a small school, maybe 400 students total, which meant I basically knew everyone or at least recognized them. My first day back was early September. My first period of the day was study hall, which was basically a free period where you could work on homework or just sit there doing nothing. I walked into the study hall room and immediately noticed someone I'd never seen before sitting on the other side of the room. That was unusual. Like I said, it was a small school and I'd been there for years. I knew pretty much everyone. This kid was sitting alone, hunched over a notebook, wearing a dark hoodie. Something about the way he sat, very still, very focused, caught my attention. I'm a pretty friendly guy, especially to new students, since I know how rough it can be being the new kid. So I walked over and introduced myself. "Hey man, I'm Jacob. You new here?" He looked up at me and I got my first clear look at his face. He had these very pale, washed-out features and dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Just moved here. I'm Chester." We shook hands, his grip was weirdly weak, and I sat down next to him. "Cool. Where'd you move from?" "Ontario," he said, but didn't elaborate. I started showing him around, pointing out where different classrooms were, explaining how the cafeteria worked, general orientation stuff. He followed along but seemed kind of distracted, like he was only half listening. As I was giving him the tour, he started asking me questions. At first, they seemed normal. How long had I been at the school, what teachers were cool, what there was to do in town. But then the questions got stranger. "Where do you live?" he asked suddenly. I was taken aback. "Oh, why?" "Just curious. Like how far from school?" "About 10 minutes away," I said vaguely, not wanting to give him my exact address. "What's your Snapchat?" he asked next. That one threw me off too. We'd been talking for maybe 10 minutes and he was already asking for my social media. But I figured whatever, it's how kids communicate now. So I gave him my Snapchat handle. "Cool," he said, and immediately pulled out his phone and added me right there in front of me. The rest of the day was pretty normal. I went to my classes, had lunch with my actual friends, tried to settle back into the school routine. My last period of the day was English class. The lowest level English class, so there were only about 9 students total, including me. I walked in and took my usual seat. A couple of minutes later, I glanced 120 degrees behind me and saw Chester sitting in the back corner of the room. He was eating a sandwich. One of those sad, homemade sandwiches that looked like it had been made with the cheapest possible ingredients and had been sitting in his backpack all day. He was eating it slowly, methodically, staring directly at me. When he saw me notice him, he gestured for me to come over. Mr. Bass, our English teacher, was literally about to start class. I shook my head slightly and turned back around. Throughout the entire class, I could feel Chester staring at me. Every time I glanced back, he was looking right at me, barely paying attention to the teacher. About 5 minutes into class, my phone buzzed. I discreetly checked it under my desk. It was a Snapchat from Chester. "Follow me." I frowned and typed back, "We're in the middle of class. Can't." I looked back at him. He looked annoyed now, like I'd personally offended him. A minute later, he raised his hand and asked Mr. Bass if he could use the bathroom. Mr. Bass said yes, and Chester got up and walked out. I tried to focus on the book we were reading, but I was distracted. Why did Chester want me to follow him? What was so important that it couldn't wait until after class? My phone buzzed again. Another message from Chester. "I'm waiting." Against my better judgment, and honestly, I don't know why I did this, I raised my hand a few minutes later and asked if I could use the bathroom too. Mr. Bass sighed but nodded. I walked out into the hallway and looked around. I didn't see Chester anywhere at first. Then I spotted him at the far end of the hallway, the section that wasn't really used for classes anymore. He was walking slowly, glancing back to make sure I was following. I kept my distance, staying maybe 30 feet behind him, trying to figure out where he was going. He turned down another hallway, one that housed mostly storage rooms, bathrooms, and administrative offices. Then he opened a door and walked through it. I approached the door and realized it was the one that led to the school's basement. The basement was mostly unused except for storage and the old boiler room. Students definitely weren't supposed to be down there. There was no way I was following him down there. I stood at the door for a moment, then turned and walked back to class. When I sat down, my phone immediately buzzed. "Chester, why didn't you come down?" A minute later, another message. A photo of himself sitting in the basement, eating that disgusting sandwich, surrounded by boxes and old equipment. Then another message, "Come down here." I was officially creeped out. I typed back, "Dude, leave me alone." Then I removed him as a friend on Snapchat and blocked him. I thought that would be the end of it. When I got home that evening, I started on my homework. By the time I finished, it was around 11 p.m. and I was home alone. My parents were working night shifts, which happens sometimes. I was organizing my homework and getting ready for bed when my phone buzzed. A Snapchat notification. Someone had added me as a friend. The username was y_didn't_you_enter_the_basement. My stomach dropped. I blocked the account immediately. A couple minutes later, another friend request, y__block_me. I blocked that one too. Then another, and another, My hands were shaking now. This was escalating way too fast. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of glass shattering. Downstairs. In the living room. I immediately called 911, my voice shaking as I explained what was happening. The operator told me to find a safe place to hide and lock the door. She said police were on the way. I hung up and ran into the hallway closet, the one with thick walls and a lock on the inside. I pulled the door almost shut but left it open just a crack so I could hear. I heard footsteps moving from downstairs to upstairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming up the staircase. Through the tiny gap in the closet door, I saw a figure appear at the end of the hallway. It was Chester. Standing there in the darkness, looking into each room, searching for me. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He moved slowly down the hallway, checking my sister's room, then the bathroom, getting closer to the closet. He reached for the closet door handle. I held my breath, pressing myself back behind a large storage container, trying to make myself as small as possible. Chester opened the door and reached inside, fumbling for the light switch. He couldn't find it. The light switch was on the outside of the closet and he was reaching on the inside wall. After a few seconds of searching, he gave up. But he didn't close the door. He just stood there listening like he knew someone was inside but couldn't pinpoint exactly where. Then I heard it, police sirens in the distance getting closer. Chester's footsteps retreated quickly. I heard him running down the stairs, and then the sound of a window opening and closing in the basement. When the police knocked on the door, I burst out of the closet and let them in, practically hyperventilating. They searched the entire house. Chester was gone. He'd escaped through a basement window. The police took my statement and collected the broken glass from the living room window as evidence. They said they'd do their best to trace the Snapchat accounts. The next day, I went to the principal's office to report what had happened. I explained everything, how Chester had been following me, asking weird questions, luring me to the basement, breaking into my house. That's when the principal told me something that made my blood run cold. "There's no student enrolled here named Chester," he said. "I checked our records. Nobody by that name. Nobody matching that description." I insisted that he'd been in my study hall in my English class, that multiple people had seen him. They checked the security footage. It turned out Chester had snuck into the school through a back entrance that was supposed to be locked but had a faulty latch. He just walked in and blended in with the other students. He'd never been enrolled. He'd never been a student. He was just there. The police never caught him. They traced the Snapchat accounts to a burner phone that had been ditched somewhere, and they had no leads on his real identity. I never saw Chester again. But to this day, and this is the part that still keeps me up at night, I think about what he wanted. Why did he want me to go into the basement so badly? What was down there? What was he planning to do? Was I supposed to be another news story? Another missing person case? I don't know. I'll never know. But I'm alive and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful I trusted my instincts and didn't follow him into that basement. Because I have a feeling that if I had, I never would have come back out. 3 high school students. 3 encounters that went from strange to terrifying in the span of hours or days. I want to thank everyone who shared their experiences. High school is already stressful enough without having to deal with stalkers, obsessive strangers, or unexplained phenomena. If you're in high school right now and someone is making you uncomfortable, trust your gut. Tell an adult. Tell your parents. Tell school administrators. Document everything. Take screenshots. Save messages. These stories are real. They happen to real people. And they could happen to anyone. If you found value in tonight's episode, please like and subscribe. Share these stories with your friends, especially those still in school. Stay safe. Stay aware. And remember, not everyone who seems friendly actually is. Until next time.